Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 2026 Write Hive Conference. My name is Hien Nguyen, and I am thrilled to be able to moderate this panel today, which is Staying Safe While Marketing. I'm joined by two lovely panelists, and so I'd love for you both to introduce yourselves. Let's go in the order of my screen. So it's Lacy and then Christiane.
Hello, I'm Lacy Phillips. I have been working in print manufacturing for a long time. I worked in graphic design and then I transitioned over into the social media space. I used to say I was a social media strategist, but of course, the strategy is nobody knows what's happening in social media. We're all just trying our best. So I have recently switched to calling myself a brand manager. I manage brand communications, which is a lot more general, and people seem to understand a little bit better than social media strategy. So currently, I do work with PS Literary Agency. I handle communications, public-facing communications on behalf of the agency, and happy to be involved in Bookland always.
I'm Christiane Knight. I am the author of a series, a contemporary fantasy series called Stories of the Lyrianan, and also just recently put out my first science fiction novel, which is A Small Light in the Darkness. All of my books take place in Baltimore, which is a fun fact about me and will come up later in this conversation, I'm sure. I have been self-publishing since 2021. Before that, I also did self-publishing with zines and poetry magazines and art magazines since the early 90s. So I have been in some form of publishing since the early days when there was no real internet like connection, and went through some different things with that, with having stalkers, having people that were a little obsessed over the content that I was putting out in me. So I have a lot of that kind of information to bring this to this conversation. um, Also, I spend a lot of my time on social media as a self-published author, so there is a lot of interacting with people, and I find that I've come up with my own best practices for that to keep myself safe, both from people being a problem and also from getting scammed, which are two really big points that I definitely want to talk about today.
Well, thank you both for joining me. I'm very excited, especially since you kind of come from two different worlds and perspectives on publishing. So, to start, could you tell me a little bit about your overall marketing philosophy and how you approach marketing for your books or your author's books?
Well, my philosophy might feel counterintuitive for this panel, but I promise that it's not. I don't pay for ads. I mostly post on social media and my website and send out newsletters. I have a YouTube channel where I talk about various aspects of writing and I read from my books. I also attend events and conventions in person and virtually. Um, I tend to make myself very available and approachable for discussion about my books and general chatting with readers because that is lots of fun. And I do share some curated personal info about myself, but I'm very careful about what I share. I believe that for me, having a big personality that matches my storytelling style helps to attract interest in new readers. But I try to restrict that kind of interaction to appropriate channels and keep a professional boundary, which means when I'm online at conventions or other events, I have to both be approachable but also keep those private things secret, which can be a real tightrope to walk sometimes. But I really believe that strictly maintained boundaries are a big part of what keeps us safe when we're interacting with people out in the real world. So that's really my philosophy. Like, be approachable, but don't give them too much of who you are, just enough to make yourself interesting.
Yeah, that is a fine line to walk, isn't it? So my approach with marketing is I don't actually do a lot of marketing. I think of marketing as separate from communication about a brand. And so I do brand communications. I don't necessarily do marketing because, of course, we're in a weird space where um, our audience is writers. Of course, there's a lot of overlap. Writers are always readers. But it's the publisher's job to sell a finished book. It's our job to represent authors to publishers. So I do a lot of posting about books, and here's the link where you can buy it. But I think the goal of that communication is not necessarily to move the needle on sales. That's not really my role. It's to show other authors, look how many great titles we have coming out this month. And we do a lot of focus on awards, recognition lists that people might end up on, that sort of thing. My key indicator of success is nothing to do with sales. I don't even see sales numbers. It is our inbox full of incoming query letters. So I'm in a weird position. Yes, I post a lot of links where people can go buy the book, but I don't think of it as marketing necessarily. I wish that I had the time to give in each individual title a lot of attention because, of course, in trad publishing spaces right now, publishers, particularly with mid-list authors and debuts, aren't giving a whole lot of support. As an agency, we wish we could do a heavier lift on that front for people, but it's incredibly difficult. And publishers do have big marketing apparatuses behind them, and they should have pretty good marketing philosophies. But actually, I think there's been so much turnover in trad publishing spaces right now. I'm not entirely confident that a lot of people who are working in marketing in publishing right now really know what's going on and how to move the needle. We'll see things that pick up from like Book Talk or something and have great sales, but I don't know if there has been any strategy behind those things that really skyrocket. Sometimes I think it just happens, and then everyone on the back end is trying to deconstruct how it happened and how we can get it to happen again. So, that's is that lack of a philosophy, perhaps? In terms of the philosophy, though, we just are communicating about what we're representing, the type of projects we're looking to represent, and hopefully convincing people that we're worth querying.
It reminds me of that tweet that made "This is how you lose a time war" hit the New York Times bestseller list. Just random,
Yeah.
organic person really excited about a book, which you can't really
Yeah, I
replicate.
did a white paper on that after the fact. And also a couple of things I've been working on is like people like, how did how did it happen with Heated Rivalry and how did that become such a success? And I was like, and that and K-pop Demon Hunters, even though there's no like written IP behind that, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from that. And so I work up little internal presentations for like, here's why I think this picked up in the market, even though I don't have a whole lot of um like a whole stream of data behind it, to because a lot of marketers will have that data and be able to do like really robust white papers. Mine's like, here's the vibes behind why I think that happened, if anybody's interested.
As a self-published author, yeah, we're definitely interested because it is
Mm,
when you're out there trying to figure it out on your own, you are trying to assess what is that lightning in a bottle that you can capture.
mhm,
And a lot of times it just doesn't look like anything you can really put a finger on.
mhm.
And sometimes it is. Sometimes you can see it, but
Yeah,
sometimes
very,
it's
very rarely there's that one tweet that you can point back to and say, this is where it started, this is what happened, and then you can track the sales numbers off of that. A lot of times it's a lot more opaque than that. So,
yeah. I mean, and even if you are lucky enough to get that kind of effect where you've got one guy going, you have to read this. You you can't predict that, you need to have that one super fan that's just freaking out, and you can't make that happen.
yeah, but at what point does the super fan become a liability? We'll get to that. We'll get to
Mm-hmm.
that.
So to switch gears a little bit, in the current climate, there's a lot of things going on both in publishing and the world. Why could it be more challenging or risky for an author to promote their stories?
Why now it could be more risky than, say, 2 years ago? I think we have to address the generative AI elephant in the room. It can be a huge liability for any author to use generated images in their marketing materials or admit to any usage of large language models during their drafting process at any stage. Even though publishers are also using large language model stuff on the back end to write back cover copies, summarize in their editing processes, it's a mess. But admitting to that publicly is a liability. You should expect a backlash at that point. It's not something you want to dig your heels in on at all. And I think it's really tricky for people who might use some large language, because where do you draw the line on that? I'm a person who uses screen readers. That's based off of LLM technology, and it's connected to the technology that's being used right now to put audiobook narrators out of work, right? But if I say I actually use that, so I can't say, oh, I'm against that. I would like for, if that technology has been used, to know before I make a purchase of an audiobook, it be labeled very clearly. But I can't say, oh no, I'm against that, because I do use that technology, right? So it's really tricky. And then things like spell checkers and grammar checkers all operate off of the same technology that like the chat GPT type of Gen AI, like language generation models use too. So you can have people who are saying, I don't use any Gen AI in writing my books. And I was like, but do you have Grammarly? Are you using like a spell checker? Because you might not legally, in terms of contracts and stuff, be able to say that you're not using any of it. You might be using it and not even be knowing. Because now it's like built into Word. You know, I've been a Google Docs person my whole life, and like it's there, it's in there. So it's really tricky. I think that's a huge liability that is a new liability for people. And then also I think something that we saw a lot of case studies, if you want to call it that, come out like in the last year, is people who started promoting their work way too early. Way too early, before a draft was finished. And so people who write, I write as well, know that sometimes the genre can completely change on you in the writing process or in the publishing process. Maybe you find an agent and the agent says, this is great, I really liked a lot of things about this, but maybe it wasn't meant to be a thriller. Maybe we should turn it into like a cozy something. The tone can completely shift. If you are communicating with a public or an audience about your work before it's a complete product ready to go onto the market, and you gain an audience who are expecting one thing, and you are at some point completely unable to deliver that thing to that audience that has been waiting on it, that we have seen has been a recipe for disaster for people. So I just like to caution people about it can be a risk these days to be too transparent with your process, especially if you're a debut author and you don't have a proven track record of being able to finish things and finish them on a timeline that works for everyone. So that's also kind of a new challenge that I've seen. I haven't ever seen that happen before, like the last couple of years, where people have gained a following before they even have anything written, and then take people's money and then never deliver the thing that they were supposed to have written and produced. So that's like a new thing to me as well. It's weird when that happens.
Yeah, well, and we have so many technologies now, different kinds of platforms that make it a lot easier for people to do that, like Kickstarter, things like that. I know that before I was publishing books, I tried to put out one of my stories as a recurring, like once a month chapter thing. No money involved with it, just putting it out there. I couldn't keep up with it. I couldn't do it. I just went too slow, and I felt really bad disappointing people. But luckily, it was mostly just my friends who got it. Imagine putting that out into a wide public and then just being like, well, can't do that. Some people will understand, but a lot of people won't, especially if you're taking their money.
Yeah.
it's funny you were talking about the generative AI thing, and I did a panel in person recently, and we were all of the authors were talking about how you will be judged if you use generative
Hmm.
AI. I am
Yeah.
I can say I don't use generative AI whatsoever. I don't use any programs that have it in there. If it does have like with Google Drive, I don't use any of the AI parts of it,
Mm.
because I have to use that to trade things back and forth with my editor. But and my editor does not use generative AI. That was something that I had put into the contract. But a lot of people can't do that. I mean, like you said, they're using Grammarly, things like that. You can't guarantee it, because I have my hands on my product throughout almost the entire process. I can say that and feel like I'm being honest about it. But yeah, you don't want to get caught saying something and not being true to that at all. That is a bad place to be. Um, for me, I've seen happening a lot are people who are coming out of the woodwork now being emboldened with the kind of climate that we have in this country to target people who are writing own voices, whether it is skin color, origins, gender, sexuality, gender presentation, all of these different things. Um, it has become really common for people to get attacked. Um,
Mm.
and it's very hard to hide that because I mean, like, this is the thing, you're selling yourself with your own voice's story. You can't you can't downplay that, but it has really brought out the cranks in full force, and a lot of that can be ignored, but sometimes it can't. And knowing how to handle that, first of all, you have to have a really tough skin. You just
Mm.
have to, but you also have to learn ways to like mitigate that kind of interaction with people like that, whether it's, you know, on social media, closing down the comment section or having control over your comment section on your newsletters or your website. But you really have to make that boundary so that people can't come after you for things that you have no control over and you should be promoting because they're interesting stories that need more space for them.
Yeah, the on the same or the flip side of that coin is people who have adopted an identity that maybe they necessarily have a tangential relationship with, but aren't part of those communities. And they have used that identity as part of their marketing for their work. And then if you see like there's a threshold of popularity, and if someone hits that threshold, all of a sudden there's a lot of eyes on that person's identity. A lot of investigation starts to happen. And I think that can also be a risk. So if you are going to lean into a marginalized identity in the marketing of your books, be prepared for some level of scrutiny on that identity, whether it's fair that that happens to people or if it's not fair that that happens to people. It is something that should be expected. It is a risk.
Yeah, the court of social media is tough, fast, fairly merciless. If they
Mm.
find a chink in your armor where they can pull it apart and be like, I don't think you're really that at all, you're going to suffer for it. Yeah,
Hmm. I
100%
think
agree
that's
with you.
that's really tricky as somebody with an invisible disability. You already kind of feel like a fraud sometimes. Like if I'm on public transit and I'm in the disabled seat and I'm like, oh, people are gonna wonder at least, if, even if no one says anything, people are probably gonna wonder if I should be in this disabled seat. And I never feel like I want to have to justify myself, including myself in those spaces, right? But it is something that you have to be prepared to confront.
Yeah. Uh, Ironically, becoming disabled has made me a lot more, I'm a lot more visible, ready to be visible about it because I'm so angry that
Yeah.
people judge about these invisible disabilities that now I'm like, oh no, no, I am disabled and I am queer and I'm going to shove it in your face, damn it, because that is like it's just my way of fighting back, you know? I'm just so tired of that. Like you have to constantly improve yourself all the time, and it is what it is. I am what I am, so fight me about it, people.
I admire your bravery on that. I really do. I think that's great. I wish I could be like that. I think a lot of times I just kind of like shrink away from it.
I've learned I mean, I used to be a lot more quiet and small about these things, but the
Mm.
older I get and the more near-death experiences I have, the less I care about
Oh,
other people's opinions. I mean, and you can't go around looking like this and not expect some
ah.
sort of interaction. I've done my hair very bright colors for about 40 years. So
Mm.
I had a lot of back in the 80s and 90s, I had a lot of people give me crap over it. Like men wanting to start fist fights with me over my hair. What is that about? So like you get
That's
tough,
such a
you
weird
know.
hill to choose to die on, you know?
I I mean that really kind of sums up the some of the public, especially these days. Like they pick these really weird things
Mm.
and like they
But in
just
terms of
will
like safety, have you ever thought, well, maybe I should tone it down? And have you not felt unsafe enough for it to become like a tipping point where you would want to tone down your appearance to maintain a level of, I guess, anonymity in public?
it's funny when I got really sick in 2019 and I had a big surgery and all these things. Because of that, all my hair fell out. And
Oh,
yeah, just and so when I grew it back in, I let it stay its natural color for a while, which is the first time I've had my hair its
mm,
natural color for like 35 years. And it came in, so I have this like sort of like sandy brown with gray, and it's curly, and was curly when it grew in. And I went with it for a while, and I realized I hated the way I looked, not because it was bad. I mean, it was
mm-hmm,
fine, but I didn't look like me. I
mm-hmm,
didn't look like the person I was expecting to see in the mirror, and it really affected my own social perception of myself
mm-hmm,
and made me feel really bad. So I dialed it back, and I found that overall the pluses of having this kind of standout appearance have been more of a benefit than a problem for me. And then, again, this is something I can control. Not everybody has that kind of situation, So we get stuck with things in life that sometimes we have to walk through life with, and people are going to give us hassles over it. We have no control over it. But I think if they can do that and get through life, I can be fierce about this and fight back on people judging on appearances in general. Um, it helps that I am both fierce in that and also I can talk a lot about it.
mm.
I'll just yap somebody's ear off about it and just like, okay, fine, fine, fine. Be weird, I don't care. But I find that like in a way it gives me a little more strength.
Mm.
Like if I can do this every day, then I can do anything. And
So, so
nobody,
for you, it's become more of a source of strength than what you would consider a liability. That's
yeah,
cool.
absolutely. Yeah, it's also kind of a mask in a way.
Mm.
Um, because it's easier to deal with the public if you have that sort of costume that you can put on and feel comfortable with. And my costume is pretty much 24/7, but if I look like I am not afraid of people's judgment, it makes it easier for me to not be afraid of people's judgment or, you know, whatever they're going to throw at me. Um, it just it helps. Like I have a whole thing. Like I wear all black most of the time. I have this bright hair. I have a lot of piercings. I'm not hiding. And that keeps
Mm.
me out there and it keeps me being honest with myself and the world and less afraid because I'm not going to go home and take this off. It's 24/7.
Yeah, I love this conversation on visibility and safety because I think people often assume, oh, trying to minimize yourself is the safer option, which isn't
Yeah.
necessarily true. It reminds me a little bit, I think it's the actor Sterling K. Brown who said he intentionally puts his sons on social media because they're black, and he thinks that's a wedge against violence or something happening to them because, they're proximal to celebrity, they're visible, they're on a social media. And I think that does kind of complicate a little bit because most people are like, oh, I don't want to put kids on social media for safety, which is very valid, but there's kind of layers and intersections there. So I
Mm.
appreciate this conversation. Um, so, in thinking of safety, I also wanted to make sure we address kind of other facets of safety in terms of authors maintaining both their mental health and wellness while they're balancing writing their books and marketing and life. And so, I don't know if you all have any other pieces of advice for kind of maintaining safety in other facets, not just kind of protecting against bad actors, but keeping yourself well and safe as well.
That's a really great question. I know for me, I have a therapist. I talk to my therapist every week. I talk about things that happen in the industry. I talk about my writing. I talk about interactions with people. I talk about everything. Um, Half the stuff I talk about, she has no idea, and I have to explain to her, which is hilarious. Trying to explain to her some of the different discourse on social media between writers and readers is absolutely hilarious. Which is also really fun because watching her reactions to it really grounds you. You know, you can
Mhm.
get caught up in these social media brouhahas and get really heated about it. And then when you explain it to somebody who has no idea and they're like, what? They're like, oh yeah, yeah, actually that's not that important, is it? Like it makes no sense. So that helps to keep me grounded. I also keep a journal and I
Mhm.
write down all of the things that bother me and all of my successes, which is a really important thing that I would tell any writer to do. Keep track of your successes, even if they seem minuscule, because when things are rough, you can go back and look at that and say, actually, I am progressing. Actually, I have this really wonderful career. Um, and like, don't put yourself into too many situations where you feel extremely uncomfortable. I mean, like, I know for a lot of people, public speaking is an uncomfortable situation. It's not for me, obviously. But for a lot of people, it's hard. So that's a stress factor, and stress makes you sick.
Mhm.
So maintaining that level where you've got enough of it, but not so much that you make yourself sick by pushing yourself into situations that are overly uncomfortable, I think is a really, really good advice to take, especially if you are not as outgoing as somebody like me.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point. Um, I I think I have some like really practical tips for people to balance the work of marketing and the work of writing. One thing that I always caution people about is social media platforms. First of all, just because there are many, you don't have to be on everyone. I like to tell people like you can pick your favorite one and hang out there, but I do caution people to not put all of your eggs in one basket. If your entire audience is on TikTok and TikTok goes away overnight because of a change in legislation in the country you live in, how do you get the word out about your next project? So I try to tell people to diversify, but don't try to be everywhere all at once, which is a delicate balance, but it can be done. And also, email lists are your friend, and no one can take those away from you. If you build up an email list, that is kind of your owned media, or if you have your own website, that is kind of your space that you own and no one can change the rules overnight, in theory. um, and pull the rug out from under you in that way. But also, so I know a lot of authors, particularly authors in the indie space, and this goes way back to, I remember Orson Scott Card, blast him. We don't like him anymore. He's a homophobe. But back in the day, he had his own like forum that he was like, it was existed on his server. And it was huge. So this was way before like the social media became what it is today. And he had such a dedicated readership back in the day. And he had that huge community. But I will tell people who are trying to build that for themselves off the back of platforms they don't own or control. So people who try to do communities in Discord servers, Facebook groups, Slack. I don't know if anybody uses Slack for, but sure, we'll throw that in there. A Patreon, even like things like that, where you're building a community of readers and fans in those spaces. I just like to caution people that those can be dangerous spaces for you reputationally as well. You start to look at these people who you don't know as a little bit too much of your friends. You might say some things off the cuff that can escape containment, go out into the world, and really bite you in the butt. So I like to tell people to be cautious of that. First of all, they can be a huge time sink. Time spent managing your community is time you're not writing a book. Um, you can run the risk of stealing ideas from people that can make your book unable to be copyrightable or be subject to litigation after it's been published because you were remembering a discussion that happened in one of those community spaces and you accidentally or on purpose steal an idea from someone and put it in writing. That is a risk. Rogue moderators can be a risk of you. I think there's a lot of exploitation of labor that happens with moderators in, I don't know if it happens so much in authorly spaces, but I know it happens in like video game streaming culture. They will have these minor children that they will put in charge of moderating a closed community. Those people don't have the skills to do that. Community management is a profession. Not a lot of people have actual training on how to de-escalate conflict and stuff like that and manage these community spaces appropriately. And then you have the minors, their labor is being exploited. They're spending hours and hours and hours in these communities with their job. They've been given a title, they're doing a job, and they're not being compensated, and they're not spending that time doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is learning and being a student. So I don't like when people have private communities. I do know indie authors and TradPub authors who have street teams or closed communities that are hugely effective for them and really sell a lot of books in those communities. But I don't like them personally. If someone comes to me as a brand manager and asks, I'm thinking of starting up a community, I'm going to tell them, don't do that. So uh, I don't think they're worth the risk.
So, are there any safety basics that you live by or you have kind of established over time that you think would be helpful for other authors kind of starting on their journey?
I totally have a few. One thing that was an issue for me in my life was I have an LLC that I operate off of, and I know lots of indie authors set up LLCs to manage their writing businesses, their book businesses. So one thing about LLCs, when you register with the state, you can't register that business to a PO box, so you have to use a physical address. In my case, I used my home address, and that goes into a database that is then publicly searchable. So if someone really has beef with you and you have named your business Lacy Phillips Incorporated LLC or whatever, they can find that. Now, you can do a couple of things to protect yourself. You can use a registered agent, which is like an attorney that you pay, you register to their office address. So that's the only thing. That can be expensive. You know, it is what it is. Anytime you have an attorney doing anything for you. You can use a mail forwarding service. In some states, they allow that. And you can do things like use a business name that is harder to connect to your legal name. I won't recommend naming it anything that has anything to do with your books. Yeah, I wouldn't say a small light in the darkness LLC is a great because people can figure that out pretty easily. So that's a thing that you can do to kind of protect yourself from being searchable. If someone really develops beef with you, they will put the legwork in and dig that deep. So I had a situation where I have done brand management for a long time. I haven't always worked in publishing. Before I worked in nonprofits who did a lot of advocacy in like gender equity and things like that. People don't like that. And at one point I had bullet casings left outside of my garage. So um, and also if you're posting pictures of like things around your home, um, like if you're going to take a picture of your kid's first day of school, make sure if they're standing on your front porch that your house number is not in the background. Put a sticker over it, blur it out, crop it out. You don't want that going anywhere, even if it's just to your like friends on Facebook. Friends can also be frenemies and develop jealousies and take things that weren't meant to be publicly shared and distribute them after the fact if they develop a problem with you. And then a couple of like reputational safety things that I tell people is to make guidelines for yourself. So when I develop communication strategies for clients, I will make them a style guide. And some people use these in their writing too. I don't know if you guys do. I think fantasy authors in particular might develop a style guide so that they're not using like champagne because the Champagne region of France doesn't exist on things like that.
Yeah.
And so they will like write it all out for themselves. I do the same thing and distribute it to stakeholders for my clients, where we will be like things like the New York Times. You have to use the. You can't drop the, or it's not correct. Things like that, like newsroom kind of style guide stuff. But then also things like own voices, neurodivergent, like the proper way to refer to certain communities and things like that, just as something to refer back to if you have a question in your mind, right? Or something to refer back to prevent issues from coming up. So you're not using outdated terms accidentally, like if you didn't know. It's just good to have that all written down, have it to refer to. You like post it next to your desk, and then it's there, and then you kind of don't have to think about it as hard, which is nice.
That's a really, really good suggestion, and applicable to any author out there for sure. Like, make sure you have straight exactly how you want to speak on things, because if you slip up and make a mistake, with just talking off the cuff, that can come back to haunt you. And people can be very unforgiving, even if it was an honest mistake. But you said a lot of things that I agree with completely.
Mm.
One of the biggest things, like I use a pen name. I use my pen name everywhere publicly. So I have a legal name. Very few people know my legal name. I only use it in legal situations. My friends, my partner call me Christiane, because that is,
Mm.
I don't have any cracks in that, because back in the 90s, before the internet was a really big thing, I had a stalker who found me through my zines, even though I had a PO box, um, because of a thing that we like to call parasocialism, which
Mm.
basically, um, having a zine, which was populated a lot by people trading letters back and forth, because this was, again, before people were emailing all the time. You People would talk about each other, and you would like share trivial facts about your life, writing pen pal letters. But unfortunately, sharing too much information can sometimes bring on parasocial relationships that you're not ready to deal with. And in my case, I developed one. This person developed one for me and became obsessed with me, and went around mining information from other people I talked to gather info about me, and
Mm.
started doing things like sending gifts and money. And when I tried to cut it off, they found out where I worked. I lived in a fairly small place at the time. They found out where my job was and sent to my job a photograph of the ticket that they bought to the local airport, because they said they were going to come talk to me and put me straight, which is terrifying, because again, I stand out and it was a small place, so it wasn't like I had any place to hide. And I learned
Mm.
really quickly what to do in that situation, which is, if you're getting threats through the USPS, you call the FBI. Well, first you call the postmaster, and then you call the FBI.
Mm.
In my case, I was lucky enough. This is back then when they were actually doing their job, and they went and talked to this person, and they never contacted me again, thankfully. But it could have gone very badly. And because of that situation, I learned a lot of things about protecting myself, like having the PO box. um,
Mm.
websites are a big one. You have to have, as a registrar, if you're not registering through somebody else, your name and address need to go on there, and some places don't like PO boxes, so you have to have some other kind of address, as you were talking about, Lacy. um, Things like, again, making sure that your pen name, if you're using one, is ironclad, and if you're using your real name, that all of your personal information is scrubbed off the internet as best as you possibly can. That includes your phone number. That includes emails that are not like your outward contact emails, anything like that. Because just with a tiny scrap of information, people can track you. if you use photos from a camera and post them online, make sure that you run them through something that scrubs the identifying information out of the metadata, because a really dedicated person can find that. There are stories about people who have been swatted, who have had persistent malicious trolls or stalkers that have bothered them. And it's not common, but it's enough that you don't want to open up that door. Just start from the start and protect yourself, because it's just a big hassle when it happens and it's scary.
So to skip ahead a little bit, but we were just talking about it on pen names. So for authors who are looking to maybe explore using a pen name for privacy reading, for privacy reasons, do you have any other advice or maybe just very technical things they should keep in mind that wouldn't be apparent to someone who's just starting this journey?
Yeah, so I don't have much to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go, go, go.
Oh, I don't have much to do with the contract side of things. So a lot of times, the agent and our business manager will handle the contracts. I don't have anything to do with it. I don't often get told someone's legal name unless they prefer to be called their legal name in like client-side communications. Then I'll be told. Sometimes I don't even know. I just know them as their PIN name and that's that. And sometimes I will get told, hey, this person uses Lulu as their PIN name, but their actual name is Lucy. They prefer if when we email them to be called Lucy, but in public side communications, just make sure you use their pen name, that sort of thing. So I have like, it's like an Airtable, and I put these little notes in people's pronouns and identity information to get put in there just for me to refer to. But I like, in terms of keeping that air gap between your pen name and your legal name, that gets complicated when you have to sign contracts with publishers and agents and stuff. And the only thing that I can say is most agents have like a really good track record of keeping things on lock, or they don't stay agents for very long, right? Publishers are pretty good at it, pretty good at it. I think I've only known about one situation that happened where there was an issue with someone's identity, and actually the public figured it out before the person's agent, not an agent that I have any sort of relationship with, but we hear things. um, but and then people started writing into that agent, hey, did you know that this person has been caught doing something nefarious? And then, they had to make a statement later. But that was a case where like that agent didn't even know like the person's like legal identity because they had signed contracts with a different name. So I mean, it can get really complicated. But I'm like, try to keep that air gap, like, like different separate emails. I have a like business phone, kind of situation. But I mean, that's a little bit different because I have client accounts on my phone that I carry around with me all the time. I got my phone pickpocketed in Italy and it had all the client accounts on it. But like, fortunately, I have good enough data hygiene and good enough security. None of the accounts were compromised, even though my phone left my possession. That was awesome. I felt really good about, but then, we have to go change all the passwords anyway, that sort of thing. So, it happens. But like, yeah, that like dedicated email address is like the number one thing. And then, oh, the one thing that I do, this is practical advice for people who are using a pen name. When you get headshots done and you're using your author headshot, do not use those same photos anywhere on your personal social media because people can run a reverse image search on those. I will oftentimes right now it's a mess right now, but I will take a headshot, give that to the agency to put up on the thing, and I will not use that headshot anywhere else online on purpose because I don't want someone who gets mad at me on TikTok running a reverse like image search, it coming back to my boss's webpage and then like emailing the agency and be like, this person had a bad opinion on the internet or whatever, like nobody needs to deal with that. So that's like,
Definitely.
yeah.
Definitely. the thing about having a personal account, if you're going to do things on the internet with your real name, lock it down, lock it down, lock it down. I mean, it's never 100% protected because, as you mentioned previously, sometimes friends will not be friends, people will leak things, but keep it as locked down as you possibly can. I mean, in my case, since I use my pen name everywhere, I don't have to worry so much about that, thankfully. And that's why I arranged it that way, so that I didn't have to worry about my internet hygiene quite as much as some people might. Um, Contracts, I never worry about contracts. Like you said, these people are professionals, that's fine.
Yeah.
Weird places where it can be a problem. PayPal has my legal name. They used to have my pen name, but then they got really weird and changed a bunch of rules, and now they have my legal name. So if I send money to someone through my PayPal account, they're going to get my legal name. So I'm very careful about what I use and how. Um, Things like Square, however, you can use a pen name because if you have it as part of your business, they're not going to check. Whatever money you get from them, if you have it put to a bank, they'll have your legal name there. But again, they're professional. They're not going to mix those two things up. Basically, you just have to decide where your comfort zone is and what you want to mix. For me, I have that boundary set really firmly in that I keep my private name very private. People who know it are people I've signed contracts with or worked with, but even my editor who knows my legal name still calls me by my pen name because that's what I go by.
I think a lot of it can be, your threshold can be set by the nature of the work you're putting out, right? If you're writing a cozy mystery, maybe it might not be such a big deal. But if you're someone who's in a publishing space where you're talking about issues that are likely to push people's buttons,
if it's going to be controversial, then you definitely want to try and at least think about it. And think about it too, because it doesn't just affect you, it also affects your family and your close friends, if you have kids, things like that. I don't
your
have
job.
your job, and this is my only job, so I'm disabled.
Well, I think we have a lot of authors, and it's kind of like content creators. There's a very small percentage of content creators and authors who that's their only job. You're lucky. Congratulations.
Well, yeah, I had to be disabled to do it, so.
Well, trade-offs. But yeah, that's a lot of people have a day job, and so you have to be protective of that as well.
Yes, definitely. And what you say online can come back to haunt you in your job and other places. So sometimes having that gap between your persona and your real person can be protective in that aspect too.
So for the sake of time, I may skip some questions because I think we've touched on a couple of items already. So in recent years, we've talked about kind of the hate against marginalized authors is increasing. And I'm wondering if there have been any additional measures or things you have undertaken for yourself or authors in line with kind of protecting in this new climate.
Well, one of the things that I had to do recently is change my contact form on my website because my contact form originally went directly into my author email, which that is a level of protection because it is specifically for that. But I was getting extreme nasty grams from what seems to be one specific person who has taken some strange vendetta against me. And just to cut down the nasty grams, what I did was I switched out, and now everything that goes through to my contact form goes into a spreadsheet. And not only do I have that level of protection, but I can also track how often this person is messaging and is it escalating, which is a really good thing to have a record of in case there is a problem. And that is specifically in response to my being out as a queer person. They made it very clear. That kind of thing, I never would have thought about that until recently, until somebody just got that dedicated with it. And now that person has also tried to get through my newsletter to get my contact info, but I have a different email for that that's super separated. So even if they get it, which they haven't because it's bounced every time, they're not going to be able to get to me to give me those nasty grams. Just for my peace of mind, that is really helpful. If I'm going someplace where I feel like I might be threatened because I am out, I try to have somebody with me, so
Mhm.
that I'm not doing it alone, even though I'm pretty fierce, just to be safe. Also, it just helps mentally. You don't have to like prepare yourself for any kind of problems with that. Luckily, that doesn't happen too often, but it never hurts to have that backup. I also tell people where I'm going for the same reason. Always, I don't just disappear.
Mm.
So in case there is an issue, they know where I last was supposed to be. Just normal common sense sort of safety things like that. I just like to make sure that I have my community of people that are close to me aware of what I'm doing and where I'm at. So if there's a problem, not to say that I'm super controversial, and that's the thing. I'm not really, I'm just out as a queer person. That's all it takes. Yay.
Yeah. Yay. Happy Pride Month. Yeah, well, that's a couple of similar things that I have done on behalf of authors. We have one author who does a lot of festival appearances and conference appearances. Festival because she's Caribbean, Caribbean Canadian, and they have a lot of events happening in Canadian cities. And so she will go and speak at or sell books at or vend at those events, but she also does a lot of book conference types things and school visits also. So one thing that I do, the agency, even if our authors send us materials to help market their book from school visits, if it has a kid's face in it, we don't use those. If so I will try to tell them next time, try to have whoever was taking pictures get the backs of their heads and like you at the front of the room, and then I will give that a signal boost. And then that Caribbean author had a stalker who kept showing up at events that she was at. And so we had to also block that person from the agency account, which of course is not bulletproof because they can just make a new account and find out where she's going to be anyway. But she will do similar things where she will have someone with her looking out for her safety so she can focus on the individual interactions that she's supposed to be having, right? And then if she's not able to have someone, we try to have whatever event that is or venue that's hosting her provide someone for her if that's possible. Um, so that kind of thing is really important. And also, I have some like data hygiene things on the back end. So if we have an author who updates aspects of their appearance, we had someone who had a cosmetic procedure, and they were like, "Please don't use my old headshot." They were like, "I don't want to see that." And so I have, I will create like a retired folder, and we'll retire old photos and we won't use those for their next release. And things like that I could do just for their psychological safety. I like to help out where I can. And of course, I always have notes on who uses what pronouns so that when I'm writing copy, I can make sure. And I don't mess up very often, but it does happen. Fortunately, people have been very kind and they just like ping me and be like, can you go edit that cat? Yes, I can. Absolutely, right away. Sorry. Um, so that kind of thing is easy. That kind of thing is easy but important, and it's important that you don't miss it. And in terms of like helping marginalized communities feel like the agency is a safe place for them to bring their work, um, I have a database of like writing tips, quotes from successful authors that we will tweet or send out. We're not on Twitter anymore. Oh, and in that database, we had some people who developed beef with marginalized communities out of nowhere, and we've had to go in and clean that up. So J.K. Rowling got taken out of that database. Neil Gaiman got taken out of that database. Um, and I will go through, of course, there are still like problematic people in there, but not people who are problematic in the current conversations that are happening. Because if you really want to investigate the biographical information available about every father of the sci-fi genre, they were horrible people, but their writing advice is still pretty sound, like it or not. So we have a lot of people in the database who personally are, I find, objectionable, but the advice they've given in the past is still relevant, it's still useful, and I don't feel bad about amplifying their voices, although there are others whose voices I've decided it's not tolerable to amplify anymore. So we take those out of the database. I actually need to go in and add some in, but I haven't taken the time to do it because it's like tedious to like babysit a database. But it's a thing that is on my list of things that I'd like to get done before the end of the year. But yeah, so that is also another just like change that I have implemented. And then a couple more things of, we always signal boost our authors when they're talking about our books, but sometimes the conditions in the world change around those creators, right? The creator hasn't changed. The work that they put into print is still in print. It hasn't changed, but circumstances have changed. And the way that they talk about those books suddenly become dog whistles to marginalized communities that are now being harmed that maybe weren't in the past. And so there have been a couple of cases where I have had to really start listening closely to what people are saying and what they're saying about their book, and make a judgment call whether or not I will reshare that message or choose not to. Whereas in the past, before the world changed around that book and that creator, it would have been automatic. I don't even, like, a lot of times we'll be like, oh, so and so is posting about their author copies just came in the mail. Sometimes I won't even watch the whole video through. I'll just reshare it. But I have a mental list of people who I'm like, I have to look closely at this before I choose whether or not to share it or not. So yeah, sometimes things change, and the way I have to do the calculus around that messaging changes too.
So, Christiane, I think you might avoid this because you mentioned you don't pay, you have a philosophy of not paying for marketing. But I am curious. I think being a modern author, your inbox is flooded with, hey, I have a book club. Hey, I have marketing services. Hey, I have these things to kind of sell you. So I was wondering if you both had advice for authors to avoid getting scammed, right? Because I think newer authors may have a harder time because sometimes there are legitimate inquiries that come in through the inbox, but you have to parse through the ones that are clearly scams.
I totally got one today, just like right before we started doing this. I get them all the time. The biggest thing that I have found is really helpful, if it looks interesting and it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. But you have a couple of options you can do. One is do some research, do a quick search on their name, on if they're saying that they're from some sort of organization, check out that organization. If you see the organization has that person's name on it, email them from the email on their website and say, I'm just checking because of everything that's going on. Is this a legitimate offer? And 9 times out of 10, it's not. Most of the time these days, those kinds of offers come through chains where you're speaking directly with somebody who knows them or them themselves, not through an email, but through social media or meeting in person or having someone introduce you that you already know. Um, it's that whole thing. If it looks too good to be true, it probably is, and that is a really good measure to cut out most of the noise. Because I know people are getting scammed left and right. And it is book clubs, it is editors, it is publishers, fake, all of these. It
Mm.
is other authors, fake. I got an email the other day from Margaret Atwood. Boy, I didn't know she read my books. That's wonderful. Not her, obviously. Yeah, obviously too good to be true. Oh, and
Yeah,
writer
we've had
beware. I'm sorry,
Oh,
I didn't mean to cut you off. Writer
no,
Beware, I
go
meant to
ahead.
mention that because
Yeah,
that
that's
is a
a
really
great
excellent
resource.
resource. Yeah,
Hmm.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, no, not at all. It just the same thing. We have people impersonating the agents from PS Literary. And we just have to tell people, we're like, pay really close attention to the domain name. We're never going to email you from at Gmail or at Hotmail or at whatever. It's always going to come from at psliterary.com. Please pay really special attention to that domain name. But we do cold email people sometimes, sometimes we'll see like an indie author is having a lot of success, and an editor from a publisher will mention being interested in something like that, and we're like, I bet we could help them negotiate a contract for that, or help protect them, because a space that we're stepping into more is like that hybrid model between indie authors and the publishing houses that want to acquire and do like a second edition or a new edition or represent their next series or something like that, but they need help not getting into a predatory contract with those publishers, because the publishers want to extract as much value out of those indie authors as they can, with the promise of, oh, it's going to be so great, we're going to help you with distribution and marketing and all of that. And is the help they're offering going to be worth giving up that much of your control over the project, anyway, so that's a space we're stepping into more. And so we do reach out to people like cold email or via social media and stuff, but we just are having such a problem. So one thing that I have changed just recently is that some of the scam emails looked so good, so official, where they had go and like grab your logo and they use it in their signature or whatever. First of all, we don't put the logo in our, because like our server, it's just to save server space. Like it doesn't need to be there. You know who we are, you know. But like, I have done a redesign of the graphics package, and I'm putting the logo on a colored background or a busy background now instead of on plain white, just to make it a little annoying for scammers to grab it and try to use it. So that's like something that I'm doing on the back end. I'm just trolling people at this point. I'm like, I don't want you having easy access to that, even though it's already out there and you could find it everywhere. Like, if you're just going to be low effort about it and just like go and try to snag our logo off of our latest Instagram post, I want you to have to work for it to use it to scam somebody. So I'm putting it on like a colorful colored background, putting text over a little bit of texture so that it's easy, like harder for people to like grab things and use them for nefarious purposes. So they're everywhere. I have the same legal name as like a fairly prominent lifestyle blogger and like nonfiction author. She has a couple of books out. Um, so she like owns the SEO on my name. I like that. Like that's great for me. It makes me harder to find and annoy. But I also get her fan mail sometimes, and I also get her like scam mail. Hey, we're a network of um, book clubs, and we really want to feature your book in our book club thing. I know you've seen them, and there's, to me, because I've been doing this for a long time, I see those and I go like, yeah, right, delete. I don't even waste my time on them. But to a new author or a debut author or someone independent who's doing everything on their own and they don't have a network to rely on, an editor to rely on, or like an agent to ask questions of, I can see you very easily falling into those traps. And a lot of times, the trap is they will pretend to be like a fan and they will flatter you, and that feels good. So you want to keep talking to them, and they're just wasting your time till they can get to the point where they ask for money, you know?
Hmm.
And that is so nefarious because it makes you feel beholden to them because they've been so nice. It's awful.
Yeah, it's a whole social engineering system they have set up.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's also happening on Discord a lot. I've had that happen where
Really?
they'll come in and they'll pretend to be like casually like an author, a bigger named author, and they'll be like, "Oh, just chatting with you about blah blah book writing
Oh,
stuff. What are you working on right now?" And it's a
huh.
specific pattern. It's the same thing. They try to
Yeah.
like get you comfortable, and then they start pitching you slowly on whatever it is they're trying to
Yeah.
scam you with. Another one that happened to me and a bunch of other people I know are people who are pretending to be artists for cover art. So this obviously
Yeah.
happens a lot more to self-published authors, where they'll be like, "Oh, hey, I saw that you're doing art. I have this art. Here's my portfolio. Like it looks totally legit." Well, first of all, no artist
Mm.
is going to approach you. They're going to wait for you to approach them. They have better things to do, like make art or do commissions or
A
whatever.
lot of the good ones have wait lists.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you can't even get a spot with them for months. Yeah.
Yeah, and these ones, they're very good because they'll make a total fake portfolio and it'll have other people's art in it. So the easiest way
Yeah.
usually to find out is to do reversed image searches or things like
Mhm.
that, and also pay attention if their art isn't consistent,
Yeah.
because most artists have a specific style, and you can sort of tell if it's not consistent. This is probably a scam, but
Hmm.
like it happened to me early on, and I didn't fall for it because my partner is an artist. I'm, into
Mm.
art. So like I immediately saw that's fishy, and doing a little poking around, I actually went back and just showed them all this is like, "You're too obvious." And they
Mm.
blocked me. Oh no. And, but that is they get new authors all the time who don't know, or people who aren't
Yeah.
aware of that kind of information to understand that, because we can't know everything. So when in doubt, do some research and also talk to other authors, people that you trust, because guaranteed if it's happened to you, it's happened to somebody they know too. Especially now,
Hmm.
it's rampant everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. And I just on behalf of trad publishing, I think that's one of the benefits of choosing to go with the traditional route is you have the benefit of people who've been in the industry for a long time and can insulate you from a lot of that potential wasted time, heartache, and potential financial losses, right? From scammers. So, I think that's one of the great things about having agents and editors at a publishing house and things like that. But I know that's not the route for everyone. So
Yeah,
I'm also
my
happy
story
to
about
share advice. Yeah.
definitely, definitely. I mean, I think that is a part of making that decision. You have to consider, do
Mm.
I have bandwidth to do all this research? Like for me, I'm lucky. I'm well versed in a lot of artistic things, so like I can
Mm.
kind of cut through some of that stuff. And also, I'm extremely skeptical of when somebody is like, "I want to help." I'm like, do you? I mean, sometimes it's true. Don't and I don't push everybody away, but I definitely look at everything with a critical eye, and not everybody is like that. I've just seen
Yeah.
enough people working their little whatever, trying to scam people, that I am skeptical until I can make sure it's 100%. And it's some work. It is.
Yeah. Yeah, in the marketing space, they're everywhere. Oh, we have this course and we're going to teach you how your book can sell six figures just by running Facebook ads and all that. And I'm like I do book marketing and like it's not easy, guys. Like these five easy steps to your book becoming a bestseller. Okay, great. I would love to know.
Plus, everything's changing all the time. Whatever worked 30 days ago may not work today.
Hmm. Yeah, I whenever we have new authors and they're like feeling discouraged and stuff, I'm like, look, if you took Stephen King from when he first blew up and became successful and plucked him out of time and space and dropped him in 2026, he would not become Stephen King, right? He was in the right place at the right time and a lot of stars and planets aligned to create. That's not to diminish his hard work at all. But that I would just say, like any of the past very successful authors or any of the current authors who are like blowing up right now, if you shift them 2 years forward in the timeline of social media, if their blow up came from social media, would that still happen? I don't think so. I don't think it would, because everything's different right now than it was 6 months ago.
And it takes both talent and luck. Like you have to be in the right
Mhm.
place at the right time. Like you said,
Mhm.
like you can be the best writer in the world, but if you don't fall into like where somebody discovers you or like, you get that this is how you lose the time war moment, you could be lost. Your works can be lost. So,
Yeah.
you don't sweat it if like it hasn't happened for you yet. Maybe it's just not your time.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes discouraging for authors to hear that, but you're right. I think the only antidote is persistence. You have to keep writing, you have to keep doing it to
Yeah.
try to hit that lightning in a bottle moment, or else it will just never come.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this has been a really great conversation. I'm glad we got to talk about all these different things. I want to give you a second to kind of share any final thoughts on author safety and things you want to make sure you advise people on before we end for today.
Okay. Well, I'd like to say that, look, you can't live in fear. Okay. This is the really important thing. You have to go out there and live your life and like get your writing out there, get yourself out there. Just be smart about it. Like if it looks too good to be true, doubt it. If you feel like you get the vibe that something's not right, trust it. Just do the investigation first. Put yourself out there, but make sure you've got your eye kind of eyeing behind you. It's just common sense stuff because people who are cruel out there on the internet, they do it because they want you to be small. That makes them
Mhm.
happy. If you are doing something and they're jealous or they just don't like it, they want to make you small. So don't let it get to you because of what they're doing, because then they win. Then they win is a huge motivator for me. I don't like that, So be safe, but don't hide yourself. That's my
Mhm.
advice.
Yep. My advice, I don't know if this is not self-serving because I don't really take on clients right now, but this is one of the main things that I do for clients is to help them develop a crisis communications plan. And I just want to tell every author, especially if you're coming into a period where you're going to be like marketing your debut and you've never done this before and it's all new and you don't know what you're doing, um, is to look up how to develop a crisis communication plan, have one in place, and think through things that could go wrong. Keep in mind those case studies of when things have gone wrong for other people and when things have gone right, right? Um, and spend a little time looking into those things and deconstructing what went wrong or trying to think about the elements that went right and how you can recreate those before you get there. Okay, you want to have that kind of written down, locked down before you get there, because in the moment, you're not going to be thinking clearly. You're not your best self in those moments where you're being canceled and you're the Twitter main character or whatever. um, so you want to have a document to refer to, something that you can look at and point to and say, here's where I am in the crisis cycle, because it's cyclical. Those of us who've been around in author spaces long enough know the cycle, right? And when we see it developing, when we see a storm brewing on the horizon, we know how it's going to go down, and we know that next week it'll be a different thing, right? And so I just want to, caution everybody to do that legwork ahead of time, have a document to point to, and be able to, because it's very protective of yourself, so that when you get into a crisis, not if, because it happens to everyone on a small scale or a large scale, it really can happen anytime. Um, that when you get into one of those situations, that you're a little bit better prepared to know what to do. And I think I really wish for especially people who are part of marginalized communities to really put that work in. I mean, it's not fair that they're going to be targeted more readily than other people, but it's also the reality we live in right now. And if I can help anybody through that season of their life when it comes to them, you know, I'm happy that I was able to be like, you're okay, you're going to get through this. Everybody gets through it. It just depends on whether you get through it with most of your reputation intact and still positive or none of it. And whether you get through it with your publishing contract intact or not, you know? So, that's just what I'm going to tell people. We've all seen it go badly for people, and we've all seen people who have blown up and it gone extraordinarily great for them that they became, that they had a surge in popularity. And I want that for everybody and not the other side of it.
So to wrap up, I'd love to give you both an opportunity to shout out your work, yourselves, where to find you online for our audience to find you. This was a great conversation, so I definitely want people to find your stuff online.
That's easy for me. I don't really like to be found online, so I do my work behind the scenes for a reason. Um, hey, if you have a book or a manuscript rather that you would like to try the trad publishing route, query PS Literary. I won't see your query, but I'm happy for you if you find an agent home. I think that's great. But yeah, I don't really, I like to help out where I can, but I don't really take on clients. I don't do any book promo. I don't do any services. And although I do write, I never finish projects. So I don't even have a book to tell you about. So, whatever.
Oh, that's great. Okay, well, I'm Christiane Knight. You can find my work at christianeknight.com or on all major publishers, resellers, blah, blah, blah. Um, Also, you can find me on social media on Blue Sky or Mastodon, or Instagram with variations of my name. Pretty much I'm the same everywhere. I am happy to talk about safety. I'm happy to talk about self-publishing. I'm happy to talk about whatever I like to talk. And if you are interested in a soft science fiction book that is about heart and figuring out who the heck you are, try A Small Light in the Darkness.
Well, thank you both again, and thank you to the audience and all the volunteers that make Write Hive possible. There are a lot of other amazing sessions going on, so definitely check them out. Thank you and have a good day.